This was once the richest part of the richest city in the Middle East. Now it's the front line of the war in the Lebanon. Buildings where last year the money makers of the Western world exchanged their millions are now the barricades of Beirut. The war has lasted 12 months. It has ruined a country and destroyed a nation. There is supposed to be a ceasefire in the Lebanon, but it means nothing. There have been 28 ceasefires, and each of them has been followed by even fiercer fighting. It's now a year since Lebanon's social tensions finally and inevitably exploded into war. Until last year, this corner of Beirut was crammed with clubs, bars and brothels. Now the music stopped and the girls have fled. Instead, the streets shudder under shell fire and snipers pick off the unwary with a single bullet. So far, the civil war has taken 17,000 lives. In the latest ceasefire, at least 50 and sometimes 100 people have died each day. The hotels which made Beirut the tourist centre of the Middle East are now strategic forts, won in street by street, floor by floor battle. No one will ever know how many heroes died here in the Holiday Inn. The battle lasted 3 days and 3 nights, and there were no prisoners at the end. The blood of many wasted young lives has stained the gaudy opulence of Beirut's biggest hotel forever. But the civil war is not merely genocide in the name of competing gods. This wasteland is called Karantina. It was a shanty town in which 13,000 poor Muslims lived in squalor, surrounded by Christians who despised them, not for being Muslim, but because they were poor. 3 months ago, the Christian militia invaded the slum. It was a massacre. One of those who led the invasion was Danny Shamoun. Was it not a ruthless operation?
No, it wasn't ruthless. They were just asked to give up their arms and go out of here peacefully. They didn't. A very concise military action was taken, and they were given free access and transportation out of here. What made it seem ruthless? Because we cleared the shanties out of here. This is private property, and it can be used now for development. We're desperately short of land, and I'm sure the people will use it for proper development.
On a beach in the Muslim part of the city, the victims of that concise military operation are now refugees. Here, these slum children now enjoy a freedom forced on them by a massacre in which many of their fathers were slaughtered. Those who owned the Sunday afternoon chalets in which the refugees now live belonged to that society which created the slums, which ignored their poverty. Khadija Jabir is 12 years old. She was captured by Christian militiamen in Karantina and paraded in a bus through the Christian streets around her slum for the people to jeer at. Then they were ordered out of the bus.
When we got out of the buses, the Phalangists started to argue among themselves. Some wanted to kill us, but others did not. Then some of them began to attack us with large canes, and they said to us things like, "You killed my brother, I must take revenge." But others tried to keep them away from us. Then we were led away, and the people on the balconies started spitting at us. Others nearby began pulling our hair. Half of the men that were with us were taken away, but those who were left behind were made to stand up against a wall with their hands above their heads, and then the Phalangists sprayed them with bullets.
The sack of Karantina was soon avenged. The Christian town of Damour had a population of 30,000. It was pretty and prosperous. Now it's deserted and pillaged. In Damour, as in Karantina, religion was almost irrelevant. Near here, Muslims and Christians still live in harmony. But Damour was a stronghold of the right, and in part, this war is between the right and the left, of the rich against the poor. In the basement of the Arab University of Beirut, there's a field hospital. Here, the victims of war have their broken bodies patched up. So far in 1 year, more than 25,000 people have been wounded. These men have been fighting for the left against the right. Most of them, it is true, worship Allah, but some of them believe in Jesus Christ. Their war is not about God, but class. For the doctor who spends his days mending mangled bodies, the war is a terrible waste of human life.
What happened to him?
He has got a bullet injury in his abdomen, as you can see. Most of his intestines has been cut also, in addition to his liver has been ruptured. So we sutured the edges of the liver in addition to his intestines. We did to him what's called laparotomy, exploration of the abdomen. It was a big bleeding inside, and now he's about 15 days in our hospitals. Now he seems to be so quiet and well. كيفك؟ منيح؟ بدك شيء؟
The commercial instinct of the Lebanon, which helped fuel the fire of this war, is not yet extinguished. These traders used to own elegant shops in the center of the city, which is now rubble. Now they do their business in the street. Their Lebanon, the Lebanon of commerce and trade, of an economic free-for-all, where nearly anything and almost anyone could be bought, where the rich made much money and paid little tax, that Lebanon is dead. In its place there is anarchy. Rubbish piles the streets. Civil order has collapsed. Shops, offices and banks are looted or closed. There is no law, no police force, no army, no government. The elegant flats in which lived those who made the old Lebanon are empty. Their owners have fled. Those who grew rich in the Lebanon seemed unable to conceive that their world would collapse. But now it's controlled by those they had always ignored. The center of the city is a racetrack for the dispossessed. Kamil Shamoun, a president of the old Lebanon, now leads the struggle of the right to preserve the past. He would die to restore the old order.
We are a country of free enterprise, and Lebanon has been built and has become and has become the country you might see in visiting all the mountains and become prosperous thanks to private initiative. This is a system which we're not going to change. Why? Well, there is room for everybody. Everybody who wants to work really can work, can make money, can have a decent living. After all, generally speaking, we have a standard of living much higher than any country in the Middle East. Unfortunately, there were two kinds of people in Lebanon. People who wanted to work and make money, and people who wanted to make money without working.
In the eyes of Kamil Shamoun, it's the Muslims who won't work. It's true that most of them are poor, their wages are low, their families are large, but they are the majority. The democracy of the old Lebanon, much praised in the Western world, which relished the economic liberties it permitted, denied them a voice. When the tensions finally burst all restraint, the poor took to the streets to fight for the future of their children.
The struggle here is not between Christian and Muslims, but against our rulers. It is not a religious struggle, nor a communist struggle. We want to end sectarianism in Lebanon. We are fighting for the downtrodden to let them lead a decent life. We know our rulers are a group of people who live on corruption and bribery in their big commercial deals. They have formed their own state within a state, and they exploited us while we worked hard from morning to night to get our money. We are angry because of this, because we didn't get our rights. Here, they used to eat luxurious meals while we lived on bits and pieces.
You should know that it isn't only the phalanges who exploited us. It was our own leaders in the parliament as well. All of them neglected us. This is why we are carrying rifles. We are fighting our rulers. We are out to get them and destroy them.
The man who guides the revolt of the left does not himself seek social revolution. Democracy would be a victory.
We shall be opposed to any movement which will be for a totalitarian state. We don't like here neither, and we don't want any kind of totalitarian state or the dictatorship of a class or a military junta or one single party. We want to maintain Lebanon in the strict sense of a European democracy.
You have been the leader of this left-wing alliance for a year now. In that time, 15,000 people or more have died in the fighting, often in bloody circumstances. When you look back on this last year, what are your feelings about that? What have you gained from it?
I feel that we have done what what was our own duty. We were always on the defensive. We were always defending the integrity of this land.
Social democracy would destroy the power of Lebanon's right, who won't yield. Outgunned, they've now retreated to their strongholds and they threaten partition rather than surrender. Much of the fighting is in the mountains, in terrain which makes easy victory impossible. Those who hold the high ground are impregnable. The militia of the right are fierce in defense of the territory they still hold. The right is fighting to preserve the old Lebanon, in the belief that if they lose, their country will cease to exist. For them, Lebanon is a Western outpost in an Eastern world. They are proud to be Lebanese, not Arab, and they will fight to the end to defend their faith.
We're on the front line here, that's right?
Yes, this is one of the main positions on the front line, facing the villages of...
Danny Shamoun is commander of one of the two main militia groups which is fighting to strengthen the front line of the right.
Right. And we control the ridge over there, this rocky ridge, all the way up to the clouds. Mm-hmm. They have control of the hills on the other side and the clouds up there. There's a ski resort.
And you control between here and there?
That's right, yes.
But with the odds against you, can you in fact hold on?
Well, we'll hold on as long as we can.
What do you need to be able to hold on?
We need a lot of support from outside. We need munitions, financial support and things like this. They're forthcoming, we're not worried.
The ceasefire here really doesn't mean anything at all, does it?
Well, it does in a sense, but the firing that you hear now is only because the enemy is trying to improve their positions.
But you're trying to improve yours as well?
We're also trying to improve ours.
Yes. How much hope do you have that the ceasefire is going to last and to produce the kind of Lebanon in which you believe?
That's your answer. They're answering your question.
These men belong to the Phalangist party. They are middle class and educated. They know they're outnumbered, know they can't win, but they fight for the right with the same dedication as their enemy fights for the left, and they will die in the same certainty that their cause is just.
Every single fighter we have is a volunteer. They're not getting paid. You can see their clothes are in rags. They finance themselves. They purchase the guns themselves, and they're fighting for a strong belief. And this is why we're being able to hold up against such tremendous odds.
What are their normal jobs? Can you go along the line and explain?
The gentleman here is a ladies' hairdresser. The chap next to him is an air conditioning technician. He manufactures handbags. The one next to him is a student, and the gentleman with the binoculars is a student.
He's a student too?
Yes.
Could you ask, perhaps the ladies' hairdresser first of all, what is he fighting for?
من أجل شو عم بتحارب أنت؟
عم أجي من أجل لبنان ووطنيتي. لا ما بدناش أعداء هون بلبنان وكل واحد بخرب هون بلبنان بدنا نعدم.
He says that he's fighting for Lebanon, for the Lebanese principles, and everybody who tries to destroy Lebanon, he's going to fight.
Could you ask the two students at the end, either of them, what do they regard as the enemy that they're fighting? Who is the enemy?
انتو كتلاميذ بده يعرف مين برأيكم العدو بهالمعركة هيدي.
العدو كل واحد عم بخرب بهالبلد، كل واحد مرده مصلحة البلد.
يعني مين برأيك انت؟
اليسار الدولي برأيي أنا.
اليسار الدولي ومين عم بيغزي اليسار الدولي؟
ليبيا.
In his mind, the enemy is world communism and the left being financed by Libya.
How do you regard the role that the Arab world has played in this?
Well, as military men, we have no opinion about the rest of the Arab world, but as Lebanese citizens, we find that we've been tremendously let down by our Arab brethren and the Arab countries, that Lebanon has poured so much brain power into their development. Engineers, doctors, technicians have always been supplied by Lebanon for the development of the rest of the Arab world. And I find it's an absolute lack of gratitude on their part that the country which has given so much towards the development and progress of the Arab world has now been completely neglected on a misjudgment of the actual situation here. If Lebanon falls to the left, then they're really in trouble.
The war is not just about religion, not just about class, for the right has a special enemy amongst the left. For the right, the enemy is the 300,000 Palestinian refugees who live in the Lebanon and help fight the left's war.
What is the future of Lebanon? The future of Lebanon depends on the presence of Palestinian armed organizations here. As long as they are here, I doubt if there is going to be peace in Lebanon.
Do you see that your war is a war against the Palestinians rather than a civil war? Are you saying that?
It has never been a civil war. The truth is that there will be the armed Palestinian organizations in Lebanon will be a permanent threat for peace and security, for the peace and security of Lebanon.
It is true that the Palestinians have led the left against the right, and the war in the Lebanon is, above all, about them. Nearly 30 years ago, they fled from the state which is now Israel. As refugees, they moved into other Arab countries, determined to win back the land which they believed to be theirs. They took to arms, but their host governments restrained their independent action. Thus, the Lebanon became their last refuge. Now each man who dies for them in this war is a martyr for the cause of Palestine, another death in an endless tragedy. No less than the survival of the Palestinians as a political and military force is at stake in this war. The Palestinians know that the Lebanese right would destroy their base in the Lebanon. They believe that the civil war is a conspiracy, controlled by America, designed to eliminate their revolution. Thus, the shockwaves of the war in the Lebanon rumble across the world.
The issues which make this civil war an international crisis are complex, but the dangers are obvious. 30 miles to the east in that direction lies Syria. 100 miles to the south down the coast is the border with Israel. The possibility exists that Syria and Israel could find themselves confronting each other here in the chaos of the Lebanon.
Syria is already in the Lebanon. The Palestinian militia which Syria controls, Massacre, have surrounded the ports of Tyre, Sidon and Tripoli. They also encircled the international airport at Beirut. Syrian army tanks are now massed inside the Lebanese border on the road from Damascus, 30 miles from Beirut. In response, Israel, Syria's enemy, has done nothing but warn that Syrian troops would not be permitted to cross an unspecified red line in the south of the country. Nor has the American Sixth Fleet, stationed off the Lebanese coast, been used to deter Syria. America approves Syria's action. The most crucial issue in the Middle East is the future of the territory occupied by Israel in the 1967 war, and especially that part of it claimed by the Palestinians. If Israel is forced to give up the occupied West Bank, then Arafat expects to direct its future. But Syria also seeks to be a powerful voice in that settlement. Moreover, Syria's priority is to recover her Golan Heights from Israel without war. It's thought that on both counts, Syria seeks to restrain the Palestinians in the Lebanon and hopes in return that America will push Israel to surrender the Golan Heights. It was in the knowledge that Syrian tanks might drive into Beirut to stop the fighting that on April the 10th, Lebanon's divided politicians left their strongholds to meet in the no-man's land between the two sides in the center of Beirut. The hysteria of the Lebanon is frightening. Reason is fled, the guns rule. Here, because the army is weak and divided, were gathered 15 rival militias, Muslims, Christians, right and left, Palestinians, private armies, numerous hoodlums and thugs, all careless of human life, intent only on guarding their leaders. It was a dangerous hour. The politicians of the Lebanon have for long been ensnared by a fossilized political system which guaranteed permanent power to a Christian minority. All factions bought votes, wallowed in power, and ignored the social convulsions which were to engulf them. In the crisis of the last year, they've proved themselves collectively to be an incompetent rabble. But on this day, driven by despair, they voted overwhelmingly to change the constitution, to elect a new president in the hope of ending the war. The meeting lasted 15 tense minutes. Afterwards, in the panic of their departure, a gun went off. For a moment, mayhem seemed imminent. Then, mere chaos was restored. The meeting, however, solved nothing. The Christian president hasn't resigned. Outside powers are still on the alert. The peace of the Middle East is still uncertain. Today, the fighting in Beirut has been as vicious as ever. Even Syria must be daunted at the prospect of forcing a solution here with her army. If Syria does not leave this country, and if she decides to keep her troops on the borders of Syria and Lebanon in order to play a part in the decision that is made about the future of the Lebanon, how will the left in this country react?
We shall be against such a Syrian decision, and we shall make a public opposition to any kind of interference in our own affairs.
How optimistic are you that this truce will become a permanent peace?
I am not optimistic now, because now Phalangists and others are profiting of the presence of the Syrian troops in order to make some little war here and there. They are encouraged by the Syrian presence.
Do you think that with the alliance which has been forged in this struggle with the Palestinians, that the Palestinians will emerge from whatever happens much more powerful in the Lebanon?
Certainly, they will emerge much more powerful.
How will that express itself, that greater power?
They are more linked with people now. Palestinian blood has been mixed with Lebanese blood. Lebanon will become certainly more Arab as a state.
If, as a result of the negotiations that may prevent this civil war going on, if as a result of those negotiations the left emerges more powerfully as a force in this country, and the Palestine Liberation Organization also emerges more powerfully, how will you respond to that? How will your forces respond to that situation?
Well, then there is going to be partition.
You won't accept...
Then there must be partition.
17,000 people have died in 1 year, but the war is not over. The issues that caused it are not resolved. There are no new leaders, no new policies, no new system. The people of Palestine still have no home. The old Lebanon is dead. There is nothing yet to take its place, and no expectation that peace is at hand.